Hello, my name is AJ Goldsby. I'm a life master from Pensacola, Florida, and I wanted to bring you a game today that I saw featured on the Chess Games website the other day. And this is a game that I'm already very familiar with. I went over it many times. It's in one of my favorite books of all time. It's the Chess Games of Boris Spassky. But anyway, it's a game between Spassky and Penrose, and it was played at Palma de Mallorca in 1969. And I just want to read you just the intro from the book by Soltis. Soltis says, a game of great depth and considerable beauty. Spassky wins on either side of the board with considerable originality. Just to let you know that this game did win the best played game prize. Actually, it split it. I forget who the other winner was, but it was shared by four players, well, two players actually, to two winners. And Spassky was one of those players. So this was considered one of the best played games at Palma de Mallorca. Just a quick side note, Spassky did not win this tournament. This tournament was actually a win for one of my other chess heroes, one of the guy I just literally think the world of. I met him many years ago and got his autograph in a book, but it was Bent Larson. And Bent Larson won this tournament just 1/2 point ahead of Tigran Petrosian. So it was a tremendous success for Bent Larson. And just to let you know, Larson only drew one or two games in this tournament. All the rest of his games were decisive. And, so Petrosian came in second. I don't think he lost in his usual style. He didn't lose a single game, but he drew a great number of games. So a very interesting tournament, very interesting mix of players. Korchnoi was there. Spassky was there. It was just a fantastic tournament. But anyway, this is a game between Boris Spassky and Jonathan Penrose. It was played at Palma de Mallorca in 1969. And without any further ado, we'll go ahead and get into the game. D4, knight f6, c4, g6, knight c3, bishop g7, 4e4, d6, 5f3. This is the Samish system. Spassky's used this many times in the past. He can play just about any system, including the classical system, and seems to play just about any system under the sun. But here he uses the Samish. C6, Penrose responds with the time-proven burn system. It was a good line back then, still considered a very good line even today. So, the main idea of this is to play A6 and B5. And in some ways, black can get an attack, open lines on the queen side, and basically try to start an attack, especially the normal plan, just in case you're unaware of it, is for white to play bishop e3, queen d2, and castle queen side. That's a very good plan for white. And if black plays passively or doesn't know how to react against that, then he can get just blown off the board. So basically the burn system is designed to get an early space grab on the queen side. Bishop e3, a6, bishop d3, knight bd7. I give that move an exclam, not because it's such a great move, it's just that prior to a game, first of all, Spassky crushed Kavalek in a game in the 60s. And in that game, rather than knight bd7, Kavalek played 7b5, which was considered the main line at that time, or one of the main lines. And Spassky crushed him with e5. And you can probably find that game in just about any database. So I give knight bd7 an exclam just because it avoids the problems that Kavalek ran into in his game with Spassky. And if you want to see more about this opening, the current state, white's next move is normally a4 to stop b5. And MCO 14, page 613, column number 48 has a very good look at the at this particular line, particular system, and it pretty much reflects the modern state of theory. It hasn't changed that much in the last 2 or 3 years. But anyway, the book line is a2, a4 now on move 8. Spassky goes his own way. He just continues to develop. Knight g2, b5, queen d2, bishop b7, white castles, black castles, b3, e5. Thus far, all the moves have been very logical, and the position is absolutely equal according to the chess engines. I mean, I would award white maybe a tiny, tiny edge. If I had to award an edge, I would say maybe about 1/4 of a point, because he just has a little bit more space and maybe has a better job of controlling the center. Maybe even his pieces work together just a little bit better than black's. But other than that, it's the engines rate this position as almost dead equal. I think it's just a few 100s, like 5/100ths of a pawn at the absolute most, that it gives an edge to white. White plays d5. Now the question is, why does white play d5? Most of the time, in some types of positions, it can be bad to close up the center. Normally, white wants to close the center when he castles queenside, because the general idea is close the center and launch an all-out attack on the king side. You try to open up the h-file and trade off the dark squared bishops and then give mate. That's the normal plan in the Samish for white, when black castles kingside and white castles queenside. But here, white is trying to avoid the systems with pawn takes pawn and black stations the knight on e5. There have been many games in the King's Indian where black has done this and done very well. I can think of several by Bronstein, at least one by Geller, and even one by Garry Kasparov that all featured that same idea. But anyway, here is Spassky. He plays white like one of his great predecessors, Tarrasch, and simply plays for a space advantage. d5, b4. Now white's next move, Ikov in the informant, he considers it dubious. However, going by the chess engines, the difference between knight d1 and knight a4 is very, very small. It's literally only a few hundredths of a point. So I think there's simply no way. In fact, some of the engines, like Deep Shredder that I checked this on, it actually prefers knight d1 over knight a4. So I don't think that there's any way that you can justify in lieu of the chess engines. And that was another reason that I wanted to annotate this game, is because I was sure, most of the annotations to this game, it's in at least 4 or 5 books that I know of, but all of those annotations were done pre-chess engines. I mean, it was done back in the 60s or 70s, and so basically no chess engine was ever used. I mean, chess engines didn't even exist back then. So I wanted to re-annotate this game just to see how well the annotations are, if the computer, looking at the computer's scores that the computers gives and the evaluations of moves, if it changes everything. And this is definitely one move that has changed. Spassky plays knight d1, perfectly acceptable move according to the chess engines. Like I said, Ikov gave it, in the informant, gave it an inferior, but I'm quite sure that isn't justified. I always thought, I remember seeing Ikov's annotations in the informant, and I didn't think knight d1 was really that bad. I mean, knight a4, placing the knight on a4 here, going knight a4, all the books always warn you, a knight on the rim is grim. And after knight a4, if black simply plays c5, I don't see how the knight on a4 ever gets back into the game. Whereas on knight d1, the knight can redeploy to b2 and d3 if necessary, or it can go to f2 and go and attack on the king side. So knight d1 actually looks like the more flexible move. But anyway, Spassky plays knight d1. Black plays c5. Now black should probably play moves like either knight h5. If left alone, let's say white just plays passively and does something really dumb, doesn't pay attention, like, I don't know, maybe king in the corner, then black could play knight h5, maybe followed by f5, or knight e8 followed by f5. Spassky plays to try to discourage black from playing f5. He plays g4. Black plays king h8, white plays knight f2. Black plays knight g8 on move 15, white plays 16, knight g3, and now black plays queen h4. I'm not really thrilled with that. Deep Fritz prefers a5 there, and I think that's got to be better. And I forgot what Houdini liked. Sometimes each program likes a different move, which makes things a lot more difficult because it's easier when all the engines pick the same move. But anyway, queen h4 is, to me, it's a nice little move and it's an aggressive move, but at the same time it's also a little bit risky and time wasting. In some lines, the black queen can get threatened to be trapped. But more importantly is the fact that black loses time with his queen on the king side. King g2. Now in some lines, if black isn't careful, if white plays, say, d1, he can play bishop g5, and either black's queen is trapped, or if he plays bishop h6, white will capture black's queen, black will capture white's queen, and the rook will take the bishop, and white basically just comes out a piece up. Because of that, black's forced to play a move like h6. I might have referred just retreating the queen all the way back, but black didn't do that. White plays a3 here. Give that move an X-slam. That was really a good move. White decides to open the queen side. Black plays a5. White plays rook a2. And now black plays knight df6. That wasn't the move there. The correct move was to play rfb8, rook back here. White plays his king rook to a1, and black plays queen d8. That would have at least would have prevented what happened in the game, white just penetrating for free down the A file. White still holds an edge in that line, but it would have been a lot less than the actual game. And I think black's chances to hold the draw there, in my opinion, were very good. But anyway, now white penetrates down the A file because black plays knight df6. So white just goes ahead and doubles his rooks, 20 rfa1, knight h7, a takes b4, a takes b4. Now another thing black could have done here was, I believe it was Ikov. Actually, originally it was a suggestion, I believe, of Geller's, but Ikov picked it up. And one thing that black should not do maybe here is exchange rooks. In other words, Geller's idea was to play the rook to b8, the rook on a8 to b8, and avoid the exchange, because then it's much harder for white to make any real progress on the queen side. And I have to agree with that. Black played knight h7, which was probably just a little bit weaker. It's not the losing move yet. A takes b4, a takes b4. 22, rook takes a8, rook takes a8, rook takes rook, rook takes rook. 24, queen a2, bishop b7. And now there's something interesting that I didn't see mentioned in any of the books that I saw this game in. Several books, The Informant, Solta's book. There's another book collection of Spassky's game by, I forget who that collection's by. I believe I got that through New in Chess. And there's another book, too, that this game is in. It's like the prettiest game of the 60s and 70s. But another book collection, a game collection of pretty games. But anyway, none of those books that I mentioned this next move, as far as I can tell, it's a discovery found by the engines. But if you fire up the engines, any good engine like Houdini 3 or Deep Fritz 14 finds this move instantly, is the idea of just G5 there. And again, you can analyze that on your own. But anyway, G5, and then knight takes pawn and queen A7. But Spassky just played queen A7 straight up. Queen E7, bishop E2, knight HF6. And now the position is solidly better for white, but there's no clear, easy breakthrough. White plays F4 exclam. Normally it's bad to play a move like F4 because after pawn takes pawn, a black knight gets the outpost on the E5 square. But here, because of the penetration of the queen, it's very difficult for black to play a move like knight D7 and knight E5 because he simply drops his bishop on B7. So F4 is very good for white because he has to rip open lines. One thing I do know from my own experience, when I've had blockaded positions like this, then generally it can be a draw unless one side plays very accurately. So anyway, white plays F4 exclam, E takes F4, 28, bishop takes F4, knight E8, that was absolutely forced, queen B8, bishop D4, knight D3, F6, bishop F3, queen D7, H4. A lot of writers give this move H4 an exclam. The engines actually find a quicker way to win, and it's the immediate knight E2 followed by a sacrifice. You exchange here and then sacrifice the bishop on E5. Same idea as Spassky. You wind up getting 2 pawns for the piece, but it seems to win much, much quicker. And I have to agree with the engines. It's a completely winning line, and you can find that line on my webpage for this game. But anyway, white played 32 H4. Again, several writers gave that move an exclam, but you know, it may turn out in the face of the engines that was not the most accurate move. King H7, H5, G5, bishop D2, bishop E5, bishop E3, knight E7, knight takes E5, F takes E5. Now we have the critical position. Black is very, very tight up here. In this position, as long as the position stays closed, I'm sure black can hold his own. But the question has to be, what if the position does not stay closed? And here Spassky finds a very brilliant move. He plays 37, bishop takes pawn on C5, double exclam. D takes C5, queen takes C5, knight G8, queen B8, and now white plays knight EF6. That was a mistake, and that apparently, according to the engines, that was the losing move. There were a lot of minor moves that could have been improved upon, but this was the first major mistake by black. The correct move was knight Gf6, knight F5, queen C8, queen E5, queen D7, knight E3. White should win this. One of the things I would try to do in this position is maybe back white queen up to B2 or even A1 and then push the E pawn. I think white's got to be winning easily there, but it's no clear route to a forced win. I only analyzed that for about 30-45 minutes, but I never found a really clear forced win for white. So that would have been a much better improvement over the game. In the game, white played knight ef6, and you got to give that a question mark now, because now after knight f5, knight e7, and now Spassky finds a really nice move. He finds a very pretty move. He plays knight takes h6. That's a exclam, maybe even a double exclam, because the idea, I gave it a single exclam because the engines find it right away, and it's not that deep of an idea. In fact, the refutation is pretty simple. If king takes knight, simply queen here check, queen f8 check, and queen takes knight on f6. And basically black's just lost because white then has 3 or 4 pawns for the piece, and his pawns just roll through, and black's position is literally resignable. So black comes up with a nice counter tactic. He plays knight ed5. Now white plays c takes d5. E takes d5 was much better according to all the engines. But white played c takes d5. And now black played king takes h6, queen f8 check, queen g7, and now queen takes c5. And now it looks like, you know, white's going to win also the pawn on b4. So I pretty much got to think that this is going to be a fairly simple win now for white. I believe 44 knight king h7 was just about forced here. Penrose plays knight d7, but now queen d6, check, king h7, and now e5. That was very nice. Obviously, there's a lot of ways you can go wrong here. Knight takes pawn runs into problems with bishop here check and then queen b8 check. And black's got to impose something on the first rank and drop his bishop on b7. So e5 is a very nice move, exclam. King h, h6, exclam. e6 was also very winning there. First choice of most of the engines. But h6 is also very strong. Queen h7, that was a huge mistake. I think black had to play queen takes pawn on e5. It loses, but it doesn't lose nearly as bad as queen h7. Black plays queen h7, and now the engines jump, their evaluations jump like literally 15 or 20 points. I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous what happens now. e6, queen c2 check, and white plays king g3. And here Penrose resigned because basically it's pretty simple. White's e-pawn is going to roll on through and make a queen almost no matter what black does, even with the best defense. So Penrose went ahead and resigned here. It's a completely busted position for black. And anyway, it was an incredible game by Spassky. He showed great technique and a model lesson how to exploit a space advantage, and also exhibit a very nice sacrifice there to break the position open. That pretty much concludes my video on this game. It went a little bit longer than I wanted to. I originally wanted to only go 5 to 10 minutes. Definitely keep it under 10 minutes. But there were some technical things that I wanted to discuss, and I wanted to cover all the bases pretty much here. Anyway, thank you for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any comments, write me at LifeMasterAJ@yahoo.com. If you want to support my efforts of making great web pages and also doing videos, please go to the PayPal website and make a contribution under my email address, which is LifeMasterAJ@yahoo.com. And you can find that on my email on any of my websites. Well, thank you for watching my video, and have a great day.